Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights, our director discussion show here on the Nerd Party Network. We're entering a new house today, the house of director Spike Lee. Now, Lee has such a long career with over 20 directed features that we're going to be covering a film from each decade, starting with the 80s and going all the way to 2020. This time, we're going to begin with 1989's Do the Right Thing. I'm Fire Hydrant Inspector Darren Moser, and I'm joined again by my friends, owner of the local pizza hangout, John's. It's John Mills and DJ Tristan, Senior Love Daddy Riddell. Well, love it or hate it.
What?
What?
No, I take issue with this.
What?
I take serious issue with it.
This is accurate. This is totally accurate.
I am petitioning the council. This is not fair. This is not fair.
Okay. No, Darren has always been steadfast and righteous with his picks. I have to admit, this is a solid
Darren, who's the one that I defended you when he tried to make you change ratings in the past. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to put that out there. Okay.
It came down to the fact that John's sounds more like a pizzeria place than Tristan's. Although, as I was delivering it, I thought it would be hilarious if I'm like, local pizza hangout John's, it's Tristan Riddell.
I see that would have worked too.
If there was a place named Tristan's, it'd be like a health food joint.
No, it's a scarf shop. It's a scarf shop that it fails in its first year.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's something
Tristan
that you
sells subs. That's what I'm picturing.
Ooh, yeah, okay, that works.
Okay, that does work. I think that's a happy middle ground. But I'm going to take the DJ. Moving on.
Damn
Suck it, John.
Yeah.
All right. Well, love it or hate it, we're going to be doing a great discussion here of Lee's third directed feature, Do the Right Thing, and I believe our first time seeing it all across the board, if the spreadsheet has been accurately filled out. Well, I'm really excited to be talking about Spike Lee. I've only ever seen one of his movies so far, and that's 2006's Inside Man, which I really, really enjoy. I love the twist. I love the story. But yeah, this is a couple decades before that with Do the Right Thing. I will say there was again, this is one that I remember seeing the cover for in Blockbuster, like walking by. I don't know why my brain mixed it up with White Men Can't Jump. As John has pointed out, this is definitely not this movie.
Very different film. Very different film.
Very different film. Very different. But no, and again, it's also really interesting when we go into a movie that is led by the director. So he's not only directing this, but he is the lead character. So
Braveheart.
Yeah. And I think this is going to be, like I said, an interesting discussion around as far as watching it for the first time, because, this last week was the first time I watched this, and I didn't have to, dust off a VHS. I had a wonderful digital copy. I think this movie has been highly regarded as far as, I don't know if it's on a film registry, but it's definitely been up there in the markings.
It's in the National Film Registry, one of the, I think, 4th or 5th film to be entered into the National Archives the year that it was eligible to be so.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, regardless of what anybody thinks of the movie as a whole, like whatever technical things you're going to come at it for, or, script writing sort of stuff, like there's definitely no question that it changed the course of where film was going. Like it's literally one of those moments where I was old enough to have seen this, but it just, it's so weird. This is one of those weird ones where it's like, why didn't I see this before now? I've known so many people. I've seen bits of it here and there. I know Spike Lee's works. I've seen other movies of his. I've loved other movies of his. I don't know why this one just continually escaped. I think it's one of those ones where it's like once enough time passes, it becomes the, I'll get around to it movie. And it's like, so, thankfully I finally had a way to get around to it where it was homework. And so I can't ignore my homework. So,
That's why we started the podcast, to force us to watch the movies we should have really watched by now.
Yeah.
Wait, that's Missing Frames.
That's right. That is Missing Frames here on the Nerd Party Network.
Which everyone should check out by going to thenerdparty.com.
That's right.
All right. What about you, Tristan? Let's start with the typical questions. What did you know about this? Did you do any research before? Obviously, being on the film registry and you being in a film background as far as your studies, was this in any sort of curriculum? Maybe not to watch, but at least discussed?
This wasn't. I'm aware of Spike Lee's work. I've seen a lot of Spike Lee films. I haven't seen all of them because there are a lot of them. But for some reason, Do the Right Thing has slipped through the cracks. And it's one of those films that I should have done a Missing Frames with Sean about because I was pleasantly surprised when I watched this one. But I did review and analyze Get on the Bus in school. Have either of you seen
No.
that
I mean,
film?
you could have said anything and I would have been nodded. Sure, that's a Spike Lee movie.
No, yeah, that's the one about the Million Man March, right?
Yes, that's exactly
Yeah.
right. It's
Oh,
about
okay.
it's about a bus trip to the Million Man March, and I need to rewatch it because I hated it when I was in school. I absolutely hated it because my teacher was so engrossed with it and so excited to show it to us, and I was an absolute wet blanket. And I wrote a scathing review, and I was just like blah 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 blah, and it kind of soured me on Spike Lee films going forward. I felt like I kind of had like a tainted view of like I went into Spike Lee with a closed mind.
You were wearing your
And
hate knuckles.
I
for
was
a
wearing
long
my
time,
hate knuckles instead
and
of
you
my
take
love
those
knuckles.
off and put your love knuckles on.
That is exactly right. And thankfully, when I watched this film, I let go. I let go of the hate knuckles and I put on the love knuckles. And so no, I knew very little about this. Like I think the only thing I really knew about this film was a 5-second parody from Family Guy.
Yeah,
Look, if we could list movies that haven't been parodied by Family Guy, I don't think it's going to be a very short list.
That's true. That's actually a very valid point. So I mean, Darren, why did you miss it? Like, why did you not catch it?
No, I think it's just one of those, I only really remember the cover from like Blockbuster, when you're walking through and you're looking in the sections. I was hanging out in the fantasy / sci-fi section, and I was always grousing about the fact that they didn't get their own sections. I think fantasy should have had its own section, and sci-fi they should have been combined.
I agree.
That was more of what my mind was thinking when I was in Blockbuster than, oh, look at this acclaimed director and his wonderful work that I should be enjoying. That's what I was going for. So yeah, it just, like I said, went under my radar. I knew that it was a movie. Like I wasn't surprised, like the Million Man March or Get on the Bus. I'd heard this title before. I'd heard it in pop culture. I'd seen I knew like, oh, this is the love hate, Knuckles picture, the ghetto blaster. I don't think I realized some of the actors that were in it. Let's see, there was Pino and Vito, John Turturro. My first exposure to him was Transformers, the movie, not this. But
wait, that was your first
Possibly.
That can't be right.
He might have been. He might have in the background, but as far as like,
did you ever see Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
I did.
Yeah, okay.
Big Lebowski, Rounders.
Big Lebowski.
Okay.
Oh, Rounders. Right. Oh, he's so good as Grandma in Rounders. Oh my.
So probably gracious, Big Lebowski then is, but as far as like recognizing him and starting to see him in more things like that, I think Transformers is what I started to notice, like, who is this actor? And I hadn't picked up on that before.
Oh, that's
I will
fair.
say that.
That's fair.
But yeah, this is fun. And it's like, oh man, like how old was he in this? Because he's playing, the older brother. I'm like, he probably was old enough to be the older brother. But yeah, so there's a lot of different. I mean, we have Spike Lee as Mookie. We have a wonderful, is it a cameo performance if it's this early in his career with Samuel L. Jackson as DJ Senior?
Oh no,
Love
this
Daddy.
This is Sam Jackson still climbing the ladder, still trying to make it up in the biz, because like his huge star making turn is until 94. He was in stuff, and I recognized him from things. Sam Jackson was not like leading actor material though until later. This is him still, getting his way up. And I know that one of his big turns actually is in another Spike Lee movie, Jungle Fever, where he plays the crackhead brother. And he's openly talked about the fact he's like, well, I played that part so well because I was smoking crack. And it's like, I mean, that's Sam Jackson being Sam Jackson, getting a reaction and everything. But like, I mean, Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee being in this, this really is, I mean, whether it was before they were stars or after, this is a star-studded cast. Like this is a lot of heavy hitters
in real life. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just
please.
Absolutely adore the idea that they're married in real life.
Yeah. No, and it's
so character-wise, that was mother sister, and I want to say
the block drunk.
The block drunk, yeah. Coconut Sid? No.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't him.
No.
Coconut Sid was one of the three guys sitting along the the wall. But we also, for star power nowadays with Breaking Bad and other, Mandalorian, you have
Giancarlo Esposito.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Who is young enough that I don't even recognize. Like, he is very different this young.
It wasn't until the second scene, because, like, we see him and he's bugging out. That's his character. And then it wasn't until he sits down, has a slice of pizza, and says, "Hey, why don't you have any black faces on this wall?" That's when I'm like, "That's Esposito. That's Esposito."
The instigating statement of the movie.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that speaking of the casting, if I'm honest, I think that the casting falls down in having Lee play Mookie, and I'm not digging at Spike Lee, like he appears in his other films. I think it's better to have him be a little bit more Tarantino with his role, if that makes sense, where he gets that
cameo
sort of,
at best, but the cool role, but not necessarily the lead
it can
role.
even be substantive, but like Tarantino as a lead in Reservoir Dogs as opposed to Mr. Brown, like that's a different movie. It doesn't make it a bad movie, but it's a different movie. And so I think that Lee would have been better served by having a different actor in the role of Mookie. Primarily because I don't think that Lee is a scene carrier. I think that he's a player and he can be like a character support, but I don't think that he's, center of a scene type of character. Like I honestly would say that if you took Giancarlo Esposito and Spike Lee and flipped them, I think that would have worked pretty darn well. Now, again, I'm not saying that like, oh, this movie's a failure because of it, but I think that if you're going to talk about the strength of the casting, I think that's one of the things where I don't think Lee was ready to be in the mix with a lot of these talents that are around him in the film. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, I see your point in the switch, because with bugging out being kind of the, like I said, the instigator of the major conflict of the movie, like everything's kind of status quo until that moment where he looks at the pictures of the Italian stars and he's like, hey, why don't you have any black people on this wall? And that is what leads to this whole series of events, plus the heat, and the climate. But yeah, I could totally see Lee nailing that and being like, that's the corner that this is all turning on. I want to really deliver that exactly how I want, but I'm okay with someone else being the lead and being I kept thinking Spider-Man. I know he's a pizza delivery boy. Like, I know it's just as he's running around delivering Sal's pizza everywhere. But
I don't think he has Spider-Man's work ethic.
No.
Yes, that would be fair to say. And that, the thing that I admire about the movie and Lee's work in general is there's a sort of there's a sort of it's almost I don't want to say pessimistic, but like pragmatic approach to the idea that everybody sort of carries around something in their head that they sort of work against, right? Where it's like at the point in the movie where it goes on and you have everybody sort of just hurling these stereotypes out to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, and you're like getting inside their head. I think that's one of the strengths of the movie is that it's a very, for lack of a better term, like New York big city approach. This is my neighborhood. That's your neighborhood. Our neighborhoods are our neighborhoods. And this is what I think your neighborhood's like. And this is what I think my neighborhood's like. And it naturally becomes a breeding ground for conflict when everybody has to meet together in the public square. Like Sal's Pizza is on the corner. And I think that's symbolically relevant because it's the corner that everybody meets at. It's the public square, as it were. And so when you have everybody coming in and they're carrying all of this baggage with them, then they're making all of these presumptions about everybody else. Conversely, and I mean, I don't know if I'm alone in this, but like it seemed that specifically with Sal, his opinion on anything was dictated by what the scene needed as opposed to a sense of consistency about his character. I don't know if I'm alone on that.
No, man. No, you're not alone in that. I didn't. Yeah. That didn't
coalesce
hit me
into
until
words
you
until
said
it. Yeah.
Yes. That's such a true statement because there was something off about Sal that I couldn't put my finger on. And that is exactly what it is. Sal is whomever Spike needed him to be in that scene where, like when he is, talking with Vito, he's much more accepting of the situations in the neighborhood. And when he's talking with Pino, like he's aggressively much more accepting to Pino because Pino is so hard against it. But then when he's confronted with someone like Radio, even in the beginning, or like with Bugging Out in the beginning, like he has zero patience for these people. Like because you get into Sal's mind where it's just like, oh, well,
there's
like,
a lot
you
of
give him an
yelling
inch.
in this movie.
There's a lot of yelling.
So
So like
yelling.
you can tell that if Sal thinks that if he gives Bugging Out or Radio an inch, they're going to take a mile. But then, he's with, forgive me, I think, is it Jade? Is that his sister's name?
Yes.
But when he's with Jade, that was so freaking weird and awkward and strange because it was like in a previous scene, we see Sal talk with Pino where we have this really touching scene where he's like, I've seen these kids grow up. I've fed these kids. These kids have grown up on my food. I love that scene because he takes pride in what he does. Like he makes pizzas for this neighborhood. He's a staple of that neighborhood.
No one's eating there if you don't live there. No one's coming from across town to eat at Sal's.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that go into that, which I can come back to later. But the idea that he's this lecherous hump towards Jade felt very out of character and just kind of inserted in. And we're like, oh, well, like Spike Lee needed Sal to be that character for the scene to add more tension. But Spike needed Sal to be accepting because Pino was such an opposite force. And there was just so much of that going on. And I kind of, one thing that I noticed while watching this film was, this is a predominantly Black neighborhood and they only focus on two businesses. One ran by Koreans, one ran by Italians, no Black owned businesses, which we heard from the three gentlemen on the red corner. Talking about that. And so like, it's super interesting to see it from that perspective where they are still outsiders, yet a staple of the community, at least Sal is. And there's so many interesting dichotomies in this because Sal's been there for 25 years, but yet Mother Sister is, when it burns to the ground, she's screaming, yeah, burn it down. It just raises so many questions. I'm going on a tangent now. I'm so sorry.
You're going on a tangent, but that again speaks to the person is who they need to be in the scene. Because if I recall correctly, Mother Sister then after everything is done is crying about everything, and it's like, well, wait, what?
Can someone explain that to me?
I can't.
I rewatched that. I literally
she doesn't know where she's
going
to get her pizza from now.
3 times.
Yeah.
I did. I rewatched it 3 times because I was just like, wait, did I miss something in the middle? Did something happen in the middle? Like, did the fire spread to her place? Like that kind of thing.
There's I mean, you could make the argument that that her reactions speak to the idea that the crowd acts in a moment of anger without thinking about consequence. Maybe that's where her character is going. But I think that this lends itself to why, and this is a staple of a Spike Lee film, he feels the need to have characters plainly state what you're supposed to think about what's happening, as opposed to letting things play out. And as a result, I think that he's not concerned enough with stitching that reversal of awareness, if you will. And so that's why we're sitting here. We're like, well, wait a minute. Why did she flip like that? And I think that one of the interesting reads that's out there, and I don't know if either of you guys got on this, but like, because I've been really sort of like seeing like, could I take this read in there, is that Mookie bashes the window and triggers the burning of Sal's business specifically to save Sal's life, is one of the reads of that moment.
That. Yeah.
I don't know that I got that when I watched it.
So you're meaning that the crowd was aimed directly at Sal, and if he hadn't pivoted it to the building and the things, then they would have just killed him.
And held him responsible for what happened to Radio.
Right.
I don't know that I got that impression while I was watching it.
When I was watching it, I got nothing but confusion. I was like, damn. I was like, what a betrayal. Like this guy worked for him for a long time. Sal said, like, you're like a son to me and everything like that. And then he just, throws it in. He just throws it into the window. And then I immediately, when the movie was over, I immediately went online and Googled, why did Mookie throw the garbage can? And like 1,000 articles came up. Mm-hmm. And I started reading, and one of the theories is what you talked about, John, where it was, he did it to save Sal, because if he didn't give the mob some sort of release, they would have gone towards the individuals.
Give them a new target.
And I was like, I like that one. But then I did a little bit more research, and Spike Lee himself said, it's like, that was not my intention. The intention as to why he threw it is because he just watched his friend get murdered by the police. He's angry, and so he threw it. And so it's much more direct. It's much more primal. But
it's much more human. Like, it's just a thing that he did. It's not like in the magical world of fiction. There's a reason. It's like, no, he just is mad and
he's angry,
and it started the dominoes.
But I think that
to give Spike Lee credit, he did love that people were talking about the moment. And he did love that people came up with that theory about Mookie having that ulterior motive of trying to save Sal. He's like, that was not my intention, but I really like that there was this ambiguity and that people came up with different reasoning behind it. So I think that's pretty cool in itself, that the filmmaker is just like, oh yeah, people are talking about it. That's great. But his initial intent was, he's angry. He just watched his friend get murdered, and there you have it.
I think that the blocking of the scene is what leads to the confusion about it. I think that had he not taken a stroll over to a trash can,
he like
picked it up and then
across the
walked
street.
over. If it had been a trash can next to the window, much clearer, much cleaner. Oh, he's just pissed and he just had to do something. Okay.
Or even two trash cans. Like he picks up one and throws it on the ground, and he picks up a second and throws it through the window. And it's more like, I'm just mad.
Right.
Which is interesting, in conjunction with what you said, John, about many things that Spike Lee does in this movie being very telegraphed and very, I'm explaining what is inside my head and what is going on, but not this moment. Like this moment is not telegraphed. It's not, and thus open to ambiguity as far as what is his driving, decision for that. And thus we get 1,000 articles, which I think is good. I understand that. Like, that's some of the best cinema out there, is when it makes us think, makes us write pieces, makes us make podcasts.
Yes, but I think that it's not so much even the screenplay in that moment. It is a condition created by the director himself, and it's
good thing this is a director-focused podcast.
Yeah,
so we can talk about that.
And I think it's something that actually carries forward as we look at other Spike Lee films. We'll notice that it stays consistent, where there are undoubtedly, just in terms of how characters are moving and relating to what's happening in a space, that can be a challenge with a Spike Lee movie. It doesn't mean he's a bad director. It just means like every director has their strengths. I think that one of his greatest strengths is I think that the choices that he and the cinematographer come up with for getting in people's heads and having them inhabit the frame, that really works really, really well. Like even going to Mr. Senor Love Daddy, there's an electricity to that. And there's even something, and I don't know whether it's a happy accident or not, but there are a couple of times where when he's talking, the reflection of the record makes it look like those are like his eyes in his sunglasses. And I think that's such a neat effect. And I don't know whether it was intentional or not, or a happy accident, but it's a heck of a happy accident because it creates a really interesting visual flair. The one thing where I think that his visual sensibilities work against him in addition to, where people are placed, like I'm never quite sure where the three guys are sitting in relation to everything. They're there and people pass them, but I'm like, but where am I right now? Like, what is the layout of this block?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about visual flair. That's a great way of putting it, because there's a certain vibe of 90% of the movie until like the very end when they kind of pull back. And I don't know if that was a change in location to the actual burned down location, but it was like, I never had a sense of place. I knew that the Korean restaurant was like, or the store was across from Sal's, and that was about it. As far as like, is it to the left if I go down to the brownstone with like, where the kid almost gets run over? Or is it to the right? Or is it around that corner that the three gentlemen are having their conversation? Or the left? Like I never, and maybe that's because it's a street and not like a square. Like I could almost tell you which corner. Yeah. No. I'm just saying, like, in comparison, something like Back to the Future, I could almost tell you which way to go to the dance studio and where the Texaco is. Like, I spatially know where that whole layout is. And I don't know if that's how they covered it or just because it's a square versus a street. But it's definitely a vibe. And one last thing I'll say on that is I also kind of got, which is a weird vibe, but I got 12 Angry Men vibe. 12 Angry Men is very specific in how it's framing things, how it's shifting over the course of the movie from higher to close up and lower and changing those perspectives. There were a lot of very intentional perspectives in this, Dutch angles, yelling in the camera, breaking the fourth wall, the three men on the side. Like I definitely felt the visual tone of this entire movie. I don't know why connected that with 12 Angry Men, but it made me think of that directionality.
No, I know what you get. Like the visual language of 12 Angry Men changes as you go on.
Yes.
No, I understand that. With Do the Right Thing, and if you talk about geography, and that's one thing that I think the three of us really find important, and I don't think everybody finds that important. I know I do. But the three of us very much find that important. And I think with this one, I didn't really focus on it too terribly much. I was just kind of like, it's a neighborhood, it's wherever, like it's within walking distance. It's kind of
vignettes. So it doesn't really matter what is adjacent to what. It's like, now we're at the brownstone vignette. Now we're at the guys on the street vignette.
Yes.
And I think that is street.
Well, I figured he had to have turned a corner here and there,
no corners,
sort of thing.
Street only.
But I think that is also a function. I like the fact that you said vignette, because the impression I get from the way that everything's structured, whether it's the screenplay or the film itself is shot and put together, is it's very much like watching a filmed adaptation of an actual play.
Yeah.
Like this feels like stage play in that I'd have lights come up, DJ in corner says blah, 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 blah. Lights go down. Lights come up on stage left and people are sitting on a corner talk. Like that's
like a diary.
Right.
You just described late 90s Brooklyn theater. Like, oh my gosh. Like you have no idea.
Yeah. and
Well, and 12 Angry Men was also a play. I think that's also what I was kind of subliminally picking up.
Stop trying to make 12 Angry Men happen.
Right. It's time for...
There were a lot of angry men in this movie, Tristan. I'm going to tie it all together.
That is true. That is true.
So with visual language, though, I want to talk about the color palette. That was probably the most impressive thing about this movie to me, was how sharp the imagery was. Like, this is 1989, and we get such deep and colorful reds and blues and yellows, and it just slaps you in the face. Like, this neighborhood is so lively, even if we don't know geographically where we are. It's so beautiful and real, and it's filled with archetypes. And it's just like, even though I friggin' hate canted angles, I really do. I really hate Dutch angles, like with a fiery passion. I think they're overused. What
do you have against the Dutch, Tristan?
Yeah.
what is that line? It's like there's two things I can't.
Oh, I only hate two people. People who are intolerant of other cultures, and the Dutch. Yes, that's from Austin Powers 3. Just so everybody knows, quoting a movie, not an actual movie.
Yeah, and so the color palette I think was definitely one of the stronger suits of the film, which goes into the direction, though. Obviously, like, the cinematographer knew what they were doing, the production designer knew what they were doing, but I feel like, Spike Lee was 32 at the time he made Do the Right Thing. There is an inherent confidence that is inescapable with this film when it comes to the editing, the action, the directing, the acting, the color palette, the performances. I mean, like, yes, Spike Lee himself is the weakest link when it comes to acting in this movie, but the fact that he's able to get these kind of performances and this kind of storytelling at the age of 32 and this kind of just stellar picture is really a monument to the talent that he has within him.
Well, he definitely, whether this or that aspect of it is successful, I agree with you. There's a confidence to it that keeps you tuned in, because you're like, okay, these are all conscious choices that are being made. And it's just, whether it works or not is just on its own merit, because it's not a trepidation on the part of a director being unsure of what he wants. Like, this is the type of movie that very much screams director walked on set, knew what he wanted and got it, sort of thing. The one thing, I mean, yes, we've all acknowledged that Spike Lee isn't necessarily the strongest choice as lead in this, but the one storyline that really doesn't gel, in my perspective, is the one with his girlfriend, with Rosie Perez, because it's very staccato. It's very unclear how much it contributes to what happens later, right? Like, it's just sort of there. And, because I have to make a joke about it. Like, I watched the movie in disbelief. I'm like, how is this young child in these scenes so calm? Like, the kid didn't even blink half the time. I was like, how on earth? Because I know my kid would have been, it must have been. But
something in Sal's Pizza. I
and
don't know.
the sex scene, so completely jarringly unnecessary. Like, I maybe I'm missing something. Is there something I'm missing about why that was in there outside of just being salacious?
It's hot. I don't know. Just like heat.
It's weird. Like, it didn't bother me from a prudish standpoint.
Right.
It bothered me from an unnecessary standpoint. Two things of that, though. I'll start with this movie. I think I was able to accept this movie once I realized, as I was watching this, I was like, I need to feel this movie. I need to soak this movie in. I need to take it as a series of vignettes. I need to, go conversation by conversation by conversation, just kind of feel the world that Spike Lee is creating and just kind of go along for the ride. Like, a lot of this, like, it's not so bad as in non-linear, but it's this situation of this happened and this happened, this situation happened. And it's really just kind of culminating into the finale where like it may seem disconnected, but it's showing you where people are, what they're feeling. Now, on top of that, I find out later that this is, like we find out in the opening credits that this is Rosie Perez's first movie. And on top of that, there is a reason why you cannot see her face in that scene is because she's crying while that's happening because she felt like she was pressured into it. Like this is her first role. It wasn't in her contract to do it, but yet Spike Lee is just like, no, we're going to do this. And she didn't know at the time that like you could say no to this, that it's not something that you have to do. You know, like she's a young actress. She doesn't know any better. And Spike Lee took advantage of the situation. Now, this is a horrible thing that happened, and thankfully we have come a long way since then with intimacy coordinators and everything like that. And thankfully, on top of that, Rosie Perez and Spike Lee have had a reconciliation where Spike Lee himself went to Rosie Perez and apologized for the situation that he put her in. But so I just trying to add context to that scene. I feel like it's one of those behind the scenes things that we need to mention where it's not everything that happens on film like that is, I don't know. I don't even want to finish that thought. It's just an unfortunate thing that happened.
I think that it's absolutely worth talking about because that was, look, let's couch it in terms of being a director. Director's job is to put the story together, but also to be, we've talked about Kubrick and, he's had his failings with that, where we know, but like a director is supposed to listen to his actors and work with them to create what's going on screen, not just treat them as, he's not supposed to be a dictator or she's not supposed to be a dictator. The director
props that eat.
Right.
They're not mannequins.
You're supposed to be working with, and you would work with somebody in live theater too. And if an actor was like, I don't feel right doing this, it's like, okay, well, how do we get there? Or can we find an alternate solution? The idea that she felt pressured to go into it while the scene was being unnecessary, you would think that, somebody tuned into their own sense of empathy would say, okay, time out, everybody, let's sit down. Is this scene really necessary the way we have it? Is it necessary at all? Let's have that discussion. Maybe we have something else happen. Maybe we find a different way to shoot this. Maybe we drop some implication, any of a number of things. And I think that is the sort of thing where hopefully it didn't take too long for the reconciliation to happen and that Spike Lee hopefully learned from that circumstance to say, okay, I have to be more aware of how my actor feels because I can't imagine being on the set and having the actress crying during something and not calling cut and saying, oh, hey, is everything all right? Not just saying, oh, just power through it. We'll get there. Like that's the type of thing I expect to hear from the Canon Films documentary, about Menahem Golan. Like he was known for being that heartless around everything. But, this is a story that doesn't get talked about Spike Lee. And it's like, well, let's be fair. If we're going to drag one person for it, we should drag, this should have been a better known story, basically, to at least give Lee the opportunity to say publicly, look, I screwed up. I'm sorry. We've buried the hatchet and I've learned from this. So, I think it's totally fair to bring it up.
Well, and for me in that moment, I was more kind of trying to catch up because we'd spent so much time with Sal and at the pizzeria and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we're going to get all this backstory for Mookie. Like, oh, he's got a kid. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was still reeling from that information. And then we're going into this whole, and I'm trying to gauge how much do I need to know about this right now? Because how much is it going to play out in the rest of the movie? Is his wife, is it that much of the story or are we ever going to see her outside of that apartment, and how all that comes together. So I was still trying to gauge that when all that's going on. And I'm just like, what are we trying to say? Like, how are we fitting that in? If anything, is obviously trying to give story to Mookie and to make us understand him more. But kind of like we mentioned in the beginning, maybe with a different actor or someone who can draw out that backstory, because I felt I knew nothing. Like, Mookie didn't act any different before or after that scene. I didn't feel any change in my perception of him as a character.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, and then he goes back to the pizza place, and I'm like, why was any of that middle there? Like, I didn't see what that was. Obviously, he put it there for a reason, but
well, I think to speak to what you're talking about, like structured differently, I get a sense of Mookie's own sense of frustration with life and where he keeps Sal's, Sal is providing money for him, but at the same time he resents being there, and he's in this difficult situation, and he's like, oh my God, am I just going to be delivering pizzas my whole life? Why can't I get a leg up here? Those sorts of things. But I fall on the same side as you. I don't wind up with a sense of empathy with a whole lot of the characters here. And I think that's where the film really falls down, because it winds up becoming like a movie that also garnered a lot of praise about a decade later, Crash, which I remember a friend of mine likening that movie to, this is like watching a sociology professor lecture you for 2 hours. He's like, I felt nothing except being talked to. And like, I'm not saying that's the case with Do the Right Thing, but I definitely think it's emotionally much more successful. But I think that sort of disconnect does happen, where it's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about Mookie. Like, is he I don't even know how I feel about him as a person. I'm not talking about like a hero or
life
a villain.
just being hard on him. Is he
Right.
even more so with the, like we discussed with the trash can, like he was mad. Like there's no, like Tristan, you were looking for the build, like what led to this moment and this decision, and there was nothing there. And, we're used to that in our characters.
And that's where I think, again, in the hands of a different actor, that role, I'm going to get that spark. And I think Lee just got a little greedy, and he wanted to be the lead in his own movie. And look, okay.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. I have no idea. I have no idea how I'm supposed to feel for Mookie, because I feel like I'm just kind of following him around. Like I'm not in on it. Like I'm not a part of it. I feel it's almost voyeuristic, but not in a positive way for an audience member. You're just following Mookie around and watch things happening around him. And I think, to go back to earlier with what you're talking about, I think the only person I started feeling things about was DeMayer by Ozzie Davis.
Yeah.
When like that, I think the moment I fell in love with him was when he was talking to Mother Sister, and he says something to the effect of like, well, how do you feel about me? She's like, you're an idiot and a drunk. And he's like, well, besides that. It just the way that he hit that line. I know.
It's like, I know that, but what do you know?
I know that, but what do you mean? What do you really mean? And then when he saves that kid from getting hit by a car, and he immediately gets accosted by people because he tackled a kid in their minds. Like he saved that kid's life, and the kid's not coming up and defending DeMayer. And you're just like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And that does a really great job of priming you for what's going to happen later, about how a misunderstanding, like just a simple misunderstanding like that, could have been exploded into something else. Just like what happened with the white guy, Clifton, with the shoes and the bike and bugging out and everything like that. Like that could have gone horribly wrong. And so this movie does a fantastic job of build. But Mookie is not a part of it.
I mean, I won't go so far to say it, but like in a lot of ways, he's kind of not the main character. He's almost kind of the eyes we're seeing everything through, but we get way more development, way more connection with people like Sal. Like you feel like Sal's beautifully acted, you feel the loss and pain when his place burns down. You feel him as a guy who's just trying to raise his two sons. Like their family's on display for this entire movie. Like you said, the DeMayer, his wanting to be more, I'm glad he didn't have a speech of like, I want to be more than just a bum. Like that would have been a little more on the nose, but he didn't need to, because he said enough that we could make that connection. Even, Radio Raheem, like he was the cool kid, the popular kid in school. Like everyone looked up to him. Like I didn't know what he did and why he's just cool. It's like, okay, I'll think he's cool too. But yeah, everyone is swirling around Mookie, but Mookie isn't the centerpiece. He's not really the linchpin. He just happens to be the vehicle of the story. It's a weird, it's a weird dichotomy.
I think that's spot on. And in all honesty, it's, it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay. And I'd have to revisit what the other nominees were, because I think that is a structural issue right there of not knowing how to turn Mookie into that linchpin that you're looking for. Or maybe it is just a directorial thing, but it is maybe something Lee later in his career, like if he makes Do the Right Thing in another 5 years from this, maybe he figures that out, how to construct it in such a way that, that part of it gels more than it does here. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and it's okay. Well, I feel like we've gone around the block or square or street, wherever we're at. We do have a nice little tidbit before we give to our ratings. It's time for Lance Reddick's role. I think there's a lot to choose from. I think sometimes it seems very obvious, like, oh yeah, Lance is going to be there. But we're going to start with you, John. Where would you place Lance in Do the Right Thing?
I'm going to be controversial here. You ready for me to be controversial?
I'm ready. I
know exactly
because remember our parameters are, it's always Lance Reddick at the right age, right time, blah, 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 blah. It's like our ideal Lance Reddick is brought out of cryogenic freeze, sent into a time machine, sent back, all
Lance,
that sort of thing.
We need you.
Yeah. Mookie.
Ooh.
Because that leaves the rest of the cast in place. Oh, and I like what the rest of the cast did with their roles.
Are you saying the same thing, Tristan?
I'm not going to say the same thing. It's too ballsy for me. John, you're too strong.
With John.
You're too in your face.
You're not going to do the right thing.
It's the heat. It's driven my blood pressure up. I just had to go for it right there.
Yeah, I don't have your strength. I would go with Sam Jackson's role as the DJ.
Oh,
okay.
As much as I love Sam Jackson and I love him in that role, Lance Reddick as primarily the voice, the narrator, the soundtrack of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's gold, man. That's solid gold right there.
I can't disagree. That's a good choice too. That's a good choice too.
Maybe it's a safer choice, but I really loved the three guys on the wall, and you could almost pick any one of them. I think Coconut Sid was one of the names. But I just want him to be the one who's calling the other two, like, just being like, what are you saying? Why are you saying, like, just calling everyone out?
Yeah.
Like he's got that calm, collected voice where you just got to look at you and be like, why are you like the way you are? And I would just crack up.
Did you guys ever see the Key and Peele sketch where Lance Reddick is there with his family and they're having a pep talk about how to attend their cousin's gay wedding?
No, I have not.
I have not
seen
that.
Not.
I will send it to you because, like, Darren, what you're basically describing is the character that he played in that role, where he's just kind of like, he's so utterly confused as to how a gay wedding works. Like, he feels so old and out of touch, but hilarious. Everyone go to YouTube and search for it, like Key and Peele gay wedding. But yeah, so I'll send it to you guys later. But that's Darren. He would have played all three of these. He would have played perfectly.
So the beauty of Lance Reddick, he plays all roles we give him perfectly.
It is.
If we eventually come across a movie with Lance Reddick again, it's going to be an interesting time. We're like, oh, but he was there.
It'll actually cause the time paradox that collapses all of reality.
Okay.
We have to avoid any And we have to really vet our movies from here
we'll
on out.
We'll have a fringe event.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah,
oh, no,
exactly.
it's Lance again. No. All right. Well, Tristan, we'll stay on you. What rating do you give, having just seen Do the Right Thing, and final thoughts, of course?
When I saw this, I was really jazzed. When I watched it, I was like, wow, that's way better than I expected. I avoided it for years because of preconceived notions. I let the opinions of others, whether they're family, friends, or critics, online critics, newspaper critics, and everything like that, kind of taint my view of this film, even though I haven't seen it. And so I avoided it for decades. And then when I finally watched it with an open mind, I was like, wow, this is really good. This is really well done. And I think Roger Ebert described it really well, where he said, "Is like, there's no villains in this. There's no heroes. Everybody has their own perspective. Like, besides the cop that actually, killed Radio, of course, everybody else is reacting to what's going on. Everybody else is just angry with what's going on. We all have our preconceived notions. Racism and prejudice is a disease that is, that is rife within our system and within our culture and our neighborhoods. And, you mix all of that together, you get a perfect storm. And I have a lot of respect for this movie. I mean, like, if you ask me to, yesterday or even today, if I'm a Spike Lee fan, I'd be like, not really. There's a few things I like, but with Do the Right Thing, I do believe he has earned that praise. And after talking about some of the things that I don't like with the weakness of Mookie and some of the things not really making us care, I want to give it a 3.5. But honestly, there's so many strong things about this movie, and I think it kind of echoes throughout time with its message. I'm going to give it 4 stars.
Amazing. So you did put on that Love Knuckles right there.
I did, and I kept them on.
All right, John, what about you? Again, interesting time talking about for the first time for all three of us. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of our ratings come across, and of course, your final thoughts.
I think that there are aspects of this that are really messy. I think that there are things that could have and should have gone better. Everywhere from stitching things together to portraying Mookie stronger to figuring out what needs to be there and what doesn't, and how does it serve story, and move things forward. But at the same time, and this is true overall, I've always been a fan of Spike Lee's visual sensibility. I really like the way I haven't seen everything he's done, obviously, but the way he shoots movies, I've always enjoyed. I like what he does. And you can't help but give extra points to a film for its later impact, right? Something that changes the course of the types of stories people tell. Like, this basically kicks the door open for a lot of movies in the 90s that I don't think would have been made otherwise. And I think that while some of the stuff can hit you over the head in terms of, oh, okay, all right, so the character is just, we've made fun of it. I made fun of this in a previous episode where it's like, you can't just have characters tell you what they think, right? That makes me angry, right? The robot devil from Futurama. But there are so many aspects of this that are just, it's the wrong word, but it's the only word I can get right now, is charming. In terms of the characterizations, in terms of those moments, there are things I recognize in this from experiences I've had in my life where I go around and I'm like, oh, okay, there's an authenticity, even if it doesn't necessarily gel the way it should. So I'm in the same boat where I really kind of intellectually fall at a 3.5, but I wind up giving it a 4 because I recognize all of the skill and promise that's there. And it biases me because I think, had I seen it at the time with no context of any other Spike Lee film, I wind up struggling between 3 and 3.5. And so that later context and also seeing the intent and control that he actually has in certain moments, that's why I wind up with a 4.
Yeah, for me, it was this whole discussion, and I almost watched this again just to kind of reabsorb I mean, we had a little bit extra time after our initial screening, but this one, it was really trying to put effort to keep building it up in my mind. Like I was definitely starting at a lower point going in, because I had difficulty looking past the surface story into the greater narrative of what was kind of being said. I mean, like you say, John, like, oh, there's no heroes and villains. And I'm like, but there's one guy that instigated the key anger. And I'm like, but I know that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is not, bugging out. That is the crux of what starts the chain of events. So yeah, it was a harder watch for me because looking at that and being like, okay, I know this movie has cultural significance. I know this movie, like you said, John, opened doors for, not only Spike Lee, but other directors to tell these kinds of stories. And it just didn't connect with me in that way. Like it was really hard for me to try to build in a way where I'm caring and seeing what these characters are trying to tell me. Kind of we come down to like Mookie, like who's kind of in the middle, but he's almost not a protagonist. He's almost, not connecting in those ways. So I'm really looking forward to this trajectory, though. I'm really looking forward to seeing more Spike Lee movies, for seeing maybe one or two where he's not the lead. And because he can definitely pull out a performance, he can definitely cast really well, maybe not himself, but all of the casting is great. We talked a lot about that. I mean, to bring 12 Angry Men back into my review, all that to say, what I really mean by that is it had a visual vibe. This is one of those movies where I check the box of the director is putting things here for a reason. Maybe not 100%, but in the high 90s, there is no like, oh yeah, just put that over there or shoot it this way. It doesn't matter. No, shots matter. Composition matters. The way this is told matters. And you feel that. I did feel that from Spike Lee. And I'm like, that's the kind of director I want to see. I want to see one where not that 100% locked down or nothing's left to chance and, you're getting retentive on it, but you're telling a story and you're communicating in this visual language, so use it to its full potential. I mean, I also love the little story bit, contextually wise, of Spike Lee saying one of the kind of primers to this idea was, Predator, where everyone, in the middle of a summer, heat wave or the jungle, like just what does heat do? And how does it that was kind of a gem of an idea of how does that change us as people? Cause yeah, I work in my garage that I've kind of turned into an office, and in the summer around 3 p.m. I'm like, man, why am I so cranky? I'm like, oh, because it's like 85 degrees in here and I'm not really happy with myself. So I get it. I get that. I'm glad I live in a state and in a building that was always had air conditioning, because I can't imagine, not, a hot fan on a summer's afternoon is all you have to relieve yourself. So all that to say, round and round, I'm giving this a 3. Partially because I feel like I know I'm going to be giving more down the line. I'm going to be giving some higher numbers. I feel like we're going to trajectory up, and I'm comfortable with my 3. I probably won't watch this again. But I am really interested in seeing where Spike takes us through the next couple of weeks, and decade by decade, we're going to see great jumps in his career as we're moving through many years. So we're jumping from 1989 to 1992 with Malcolm X here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.